Hello and welcome to today's grand incident. Racing games. They've been around for a long time and come in a few different forms, ranging from cartoony kart racers to more realistic street or circuit racers. Growing up, I had a few different racing games myself: Mario Kart 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and of course, NASCAR 99. Since then, I've only ever preferred the party kart racers that every mascot character has had their own of at some point. Touhou didn't escape this fate, but this time around it was the fans who made it happen. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Touhou's unofficial kart racer, with a very unique idea on what a kart is. The game, known as Gensou, Skydrift. The game was originally released on August 14, 2015, and later released on Steam and Nintendo Switch on December 11th and 12th, 2019 respectively, by Doujin Circle Ilu Collab, and is a 3D racing game featuring 20 different playable characters from the Touhou series. Gameplay is what you'd expect, racing around a variety of tracks, using items to gain advantages, or just mess with other players. All tracks feature boost rings, which give you a boost of speed, as well as charging your spell gauge. More on that later. As I'm sure you've noticed, the game has a similar idea to Mario Kart Double Dash, in that each racer is composed of two characters. The difference is one person riding on top and the other being used as the cart, instead of both sharing a vehicle. Interesting tidbit, an article written some months before the Switch release claims that some of the staff who worked on Skydrift also worked on Double Dash, so that's pretty cool, if it's true. Back to the game, you have a couple different options, but I'm going right into the campaign. The story here is that a large amount of magical energy has appeared and is creating racetracks around Gensokyo. Reimu and Marissa notice this and begin to investigate, but something is also sapping away their energy, so Reimu decides it would be best to pair up to conserve their remaining power, and that decision somehow turns Marissa into a human surfboard. The campaign is essentially just a tour through the tracks in the game, giving you a chance to play as a few different combinations of characters. All characters have different stats, represented in-game by a radar graph. These stats are speed, air, boost, drift, mass, and spell. Speed is how fast you can go. Air is the same, but applies while airborne. Boost is also acceleration. It affects how strong your boosts from speed-ups are, as well as how quickly you can get your speed back, should you get hit. Drift is how well you're able to drift. It's a little more complicated than that, but the game doesn't actually tell you the stats that make up this one, those being cornering and grip, and instead just presents them combined. To simplify it, the higher your drift, the sharper the turns you'll be able to make. Mass is weight. The higher it is, the farther you knock away those you bump into, and the less knockback you take. Last is spell. This affects how fast your spell gauge charges. The spell system is how this game handles items. Once the bar is full, you can press the spell button to roll for an item. There are two levels of spell. Level 1 is the green bar, and gives you a single-use offensive item or a small speed boost. Level 2 is the blue bar. These give you stronger speed-ups and triple variants of some level 1 items, with a few unique items in the pool. Most of the items are straightforward, but some of them are pretty unclear with how they work. The most important ones to know about are these, the red and green speed-up items. These items give a small boost in height as well as speed, and many of the shortcuts in this game require that height to reach them. There is one more gauge here to mention. The little yellow bar above your spell will gradually fill up over time, and like your spell gauge, the speed is influenced by your placement and character stats. Once the bar fills, the next level 2 spell you roll will be replaced with a last word. Every character has a different last word, and can only use one per race. The speed at which your last word charges is separate from the spell stat. It's its own stat that you can't actually see in-game. Some characters have such a fast charge that you're guaranteed to get one in any standard race, while others are incredibly slow, and are only going to appear on longer courses. The game does give you a simple explanation of each last word, but there's a bit more to them than what's stated, so it's similar to the items in that regard. Last thing to mention about the spell gauge is that a bit of it is required to switch between rider and board. Switching locks you into place, but gives you a small burst of speed. The benefit of switching your characters is for dealing with different aspects of a track. Some tracks are speed orientated, while others are a lot heavier on sharp turns and drifting. An example here is the pairing of Remilia and Sakuya. Remilia's strengths are high speed and air, but her drift is incredibly poor. Conversely, Sakuya has poor speed and air, but has the highest drift stat in the game. Using this combination covers both characters' weaknesses when needed, as you aren't going to be able to pick the track you play on every time. There are a bunch of character combinations to try out, so feel free to experiment and find your favorite. That's about everything you should know for getting started with the game. If you're interested in more detailed explanations of characters, items, and last words, I've left a link to the wiki in the description below. For now, back to the story. At the end of the campaign, it's revealed that Chirno was behind the whole incident. Well, not exactly. She had paired up with the troublemaker, Kijin Seija, who is the actual main cause. Win the race and the story is done, with credits and all. Once the campaign is done, you can try the other modes. First is Versus, the obvious mode for a racing game. You can play alone, local multiplayer, or online. In local play, you can customize the rule set to change the number of racers, laps, and the spawn rates of items. There are no cups to select. Instead, you get to choose a course, or set a certain number to play with the ability to randomize what you get. Local is great and all, but if you want a full session of humans, you'll need to go online. Online lets you choose from ranked matches or creating lobbies. At least that's what's supposed to happen. I queued up for a ranked match and waited for 5 minutes with no results. Afterwards, I checked for lobbies, and again, nothing. It's not really the game's fault that I can't find anyone, but I will blame it for something else here. As it happens, there are different costumes that can be unlocked in the game. These costumes are usually references to other characters, or just nice designs, and the way you unlock most of them is by hitting a certain rank in ranked matches. I can't find anyone to play against, so I can't rank up, and there's no other way to get these alternate costumes. I looked up the requirements to rank up afterwards, and the amount you need would be beyond impossible, given the circumstance. There are some other costumes that are unlocked by participating and/or winning an official or unofficial tournament. I have no idea what this means, so I'm gonna assume these are beyond reach as well. Again, I don't blame the game because I can't match up, but it's a real shame that there is basically no way for me to get to use these costumes, as I really like how a lot of them look. Next is Free Run, which is the game's time trials. Both characters will start with the level 1 speed boost item, and you can't pull anything else. That's about it. In the gallery, you can look at replay data, view the 3D models, and listen to the game's soundtrack. The music in this game was made by a few different people: Soundholic, Stardrops, and Yutu Akiyama. Soundholic is a group that has been around since 2006 and specialize in a few different genres. Their discography is pretty large, but it's worth investing some time into listening for sure. Yutu Akiyama is the main composer for the group Twilight Frontier, and is responsible for many of the tracks used in the official Touhou fighting games. Unfortunately, I don't know who Stardrops are. I tried searching by their name, but I can't find any links or info on who they are and what they've made. If anyone knows anything about them, then please do tell me. I'd love to listen to more of their work. The last option is just that, options. It's what you'd expect, really. The only thing is on the Steam version, you can open a link to check out records about the game, such as character win rates per track, character usage, and of course, world records for Free Run. That covers everything in the game. Well, not exactly. Turns out, there's another campaign you can do by selecting it after beating it. The game does not do a good job indicating this. I only tried because I saw a bunch of characters and courses available in Versus that I hadn't seen throughout the story. This time around, you only play as Chirno and Seija, on a journey to settle the score with everyone who beat her last time. It's pretty much just that, playing through the other stages and seeing a couple other characters. I do appreciate the end though, an amusement park on the moon created by Touhou's fun-sized destructive forces, Clownpiece and Flandre. Winning the last race will play the credits again and mark the actual ending of the game. Gensou Skydrift is quite a fun game. The controls are smooth and responsive, and the character variety and abilities are well done. Certain characters being in the race will make you have to play a little different every time, so you aren't just going through the motions every race. There's enough chaos in the items to spice up the gameplay, and I personally like that the majority of shortcuts are only accessible through specific items. I mentioned earlier who made the music, but I didn't really state how good it is. There's a great variety in tracks, all of which are upbeat and fit the gameplay well. Some tracks share music, and while that makes sense given that these tracks share a location, I would have loved it if every course had its own theme. The art is great, and the 3D models look pretty good. It's a pleasing game to look at, except when Marissa or Sanai use their last word and blind you. Now that I've said my positives, here are my negatives. The costumes are something I already mentioned, so I won't repeat that one. The big one is the level geometry being kinda jank. Courses have a fallout zone that will put you back on the map, but their locations can be weird. This is most noticeable on the Misty Lake and Old Capital tracks. Sometimes you're just flying and the game suddenly grabs you, says you went out of bounds. Next is the camera. There are a few tracks where you ride up and down walls, and the camera gives you an absolute face full of floor. This happens on the Scarlet Devil Mansion tracks, and it can be kinda jarring, especially since there's a shortcut immediately after one of these instances. These next few are personal gripes, so I would understand if you don't feel the same. I think the spell system is a neat way to do items, but that also means there's nothing on the road. And from the item pool itself, there are only 2 items you can place on the track, one of which is a level 2 item that can only be pulled in first place. It makes the track as a whole feel a little barren, with nothing ever really being there aside from boost rings. Another thing about the items is the inability to throw things behind you, even though there's a button for seeing behind you. If you want to put a bomb behind you, you have to throw it at a wall in front of you, but why bother when you should be preparing for a turn? Speaking of getting hit by an item, the characters barely react to any of it. The models are good for sure, but they're a bit stiff when it comes to wiping out. The positives far outweigh the negatives here. The game is very enjoyable as it is, and it seems that the developers still post updates and run tournaments. I only wish it was easier to play with a full lobby of people casually. Regarding the Circle Ilu collab, they are still active to this day. Gensou Skydrift is their latest Touhou fan game, but they don't limit themselves to Touhou only. I'll leave a link to their website down below. There you can check out everything they've made and even what platform you can grab them on. The amount of effort that went into Skydrift makes me pretty excited to see what big projects the group will do next. With all that said, time for the rating. Gensou Skydrift is definitely a ranked Cheerno of a game. Let me explain why. The story here is a fun distraction that doubles as an intro to the gameplay. The character exchanges are short and not terribly important, but it's fun watching Cheerno try to settle the score. Some of the items in the game are named after spell cards, the special attacks used in actual Touhou, but they aren't referred to by name in game. The game does give a name to the last words though. All of the last words are related to the character's individual abilities. It's a nice peek into what their strengths are. Many of the tracks in the game are themed to locations from Touhou, but it's not like knowing that is going to help you figure out where the shortcuts are. Would you agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. Gensou Skydrift is a very weird concept for a racing game to explain to someone. I really like that it manages to run with such an odd idea and execute it pretty well. Overall, it's just a fine racing game that can even appeal to those who don't know anything about Touhou. If you're interested in trying it yourself, do be aware that it isn't so easy to jump into a full lobby to play with. But if you know enough people to fill one up, it's some of that chaotic Mario Kart fun in a nice Touhou package. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.